Okay. Yeah, so today's talk is about the personality of Christ. So I think the outline for today will start with what the world says about Christ and who Christ is, what the Old Testament says about Christ and who Christ is, the New Testament says about Christ, and then what we say about Christ, okay? When Black told me about this talk, I wasn't really sure where to start. Where do you start talking about Christ, right? We all have some sort of relationship with God, but where do you start in terms of how you talk about Him? So I thought maybe the best way to start is the same way Jesus started. If you don't know, He was talking with His disciples, and I think it was in Caesarea, and He's like to them, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" And does anybody know what the response was? What did the disciples respond to the question, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" They said, "Some say John the Baptist, and some say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets." Does that sound familiar to anyone here? I'm not sure how familiar everyone here is with other religions, but Islam, for example, thinks Jesus is just a prophet. So it sounds like even back then there were thoughts about Jesus being this great person, but maybe just a prophet. Obviously, we don't believe that. I'd now really like to ask you, what do your friends and colleagues say about Jesus? Anyone at uni or work or whatever, what do they say about Christ? I'm not sure if you have those conversations. What do you reckon? Pink shirt. Yes. No. Just say, do you go to the Coptic school? All right. Do you have any friends outside the Coptic school? That's very nice. That's very nice. Anyone here have friends at uni or work that are not Christian? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so my colleague, I work with him pretty much every day. He's Muslim and he respects Christianity, but he's completely against it and doesn't believe in it.
Yeah, good. Have you had that conversation with him? Have you had conversations with him, or is it
just multiple? He tries to debate with me and tries to convert me. I'm like, never.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes, Margaret, I saw your hand up. Yeah, okay. Back corner.
I mean, I do have conversations at times, especially with debates in uni. I go to Western Sydney, so obviously, it's predominantly more Muslim. Yeah, there's types of debates, and they'll message me after hours. I had one where Abuna was helping me pulling up the Quran and a bunch of surahs to go, no, say this to him, say this to him. So I've had many debates, but again, they think he's a prophet. Some don't. Some are friendly with it, try to understand where I'm coming from, and whereas ones come through like an attack. So it just really depends who you talk to, who you meet, and at work too, they're not really for religion. So just a combination, just different experiences with different people. I feel like it's the social setting that sets it. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah, so I also have friends who are Muslim and they'll say, "Oh, you're Jesus' prophet," and that's it. I have friends that are Christian and they'll maybe not the same even denomination. They have different versions of how they might see Jesus as well. And then I have friends who are completely atheists who will say, probably very nasty things about Jesus behind my back. Maybe not to my face, but they probably do say some not nice things about Jesus. I, like yourself, in terms of this conversation, thought, where can I find what other people would say about Jesus? And oftentimes that is, like you mentioned, social media. So I went to Reddit, which is basically the darkest place anyone can go. And it's often a lot of sad, really angry teenage men, teenage boys, or like young adult men that type stuff on there. But this guy who was a previous Christian wrote this question on a Reddit forum. And it was a Reddit forum that talks about people who were old Christians who left the church. So he says, what are your views on Jesus since you left Christianity? For me, I see him as someone who disagreed with many of the Jewish teachings and practices and wanted to change. I don't believe he's the Son of God, but I see him as a great role model with great teachings. So similar maybe to some of your friends who might see Jesus as, okay, if I have to recognize his presence, then I see him as maybe a good guy and nothing more than that. Then there's this person who might also be some of your friends who replies to this question. He says, I mean, how can anyone call this man a great moral teacher? The crazy thing is, was Jesus being Jewish, believing in the Old Testament and the deity behind the Torah, the God of Israel, Yahweh, was that this God was outside the universe and infinitely different. Unlike the pantheists in India, anyone can claim to be with one God, can claim to be one with God. So I don't really know what he means by the last part, but it's obvious that he's got some anger or doesn't really see that there's any morality to Jesus. There was someone called Flavius Josephus who is a Jewish historian. So he lived only about 70 years after Christ, and he wrote this in 93, 94 AD. And so he's a Jewish historian, remained Jewish the whole time. But in one of his texts called The Antiquities of the Jews, he says, now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ, and when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him. So what he's saying there is, there was this man called Jesus, if you can even call him a man, and he was so great that a lot of people followed him. And this guy is not Christian, but for some reason he even says that Jesus was the Christ, which is very out of the blue for a lot of Jews. And because this is such a objective view, a lot of people even say that maybe he didn't even write this part. He wrote everything else, but maybe this part he didn't actually write. There were also other people around that time, Romans, who spoke about Jesus, and they spoke about Christians, but they didn't speak about him in a nice way. They spoke about Christians as being a bit annoying, like, we killed this guy, we thought we got rid of him, but the Christians, for some reason, are still stuck around. So I think we'll stop there about what the world sees about Christ. And we'll start with the Old Testament, starting with Isaiah 53. So this is a verse from that chapter, and it says, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. So if you're not familiar with the Old Testament, prophets like Isaiah were mediators between God and everyone else. So God would talk to his people through these prophets, and their view of what God looks like came through these prophets. And so they'd write this down or they'd speak it, and that's how people knew about God. And in Isaiah chapter 53, he's describing the Christ to come as almost like a lamb coming to the slaughter. So that's the lamb there, all right? So the lamb comes up again in the Old Testament quite frequently. Can anyone guess where else? Just a guess. Juliana, what do you reckon?
Hang on.
So where else does the lamb, the idea of a lamb, come up in the Old Testament?
In the Old Testament?
Yeah. Hazard a guess. Guess completely.
A lot of places.
Yeah, if you had to say something.
Abraham?
Abraham's a good one. What happened with Abraham? Yeah, no, okay.
His son?
Okay, good, yeah. And Marina, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say maybe, like, I'm not sure, but wasn't it when God passed over Egypt during the the plagues, I think.
Good.
Yeah, the plagues.
Yeah,
The Passover.
Yeah, the Passover,
Exactly,
correct.
the
And
lamb.
they had a lamb there as well.
Yeah.
Perfect. So those are two very excellent examples. One of them I realized I probably should have included. So thanks, Marina, for that. But I didn't include that. But that's an excellent example. All right. The one I also included was about the sacrificial lamb. So in the Old Testament, if you sinned, something had to die, and it had to be an animal. And what they would do is usually get a bull, and if you don't have a bull, you get a lamb. But this lamb has to be perfect. There can't be any issues with this lamb. And so they get this lamb and they sacrifice it on behalf of their own sins. So that's where one other place we see the lamb, besides the Passover, and besides Juliana's excellent example, right? So the types of Christ are in the Old Testament. So types are just stories or people in the Old Testament that reflect Christ, his nature, his identity, and who he is and who he will be, right? One of these people is Abraham and Isaac. And if you don't know the story, Abraham takes his young son, Isaac, and who he was promised, this is his only son, and is told by God to sacrifice him. But as he's about to slay his son, an angel appears, tells him not to slay him. So here you see the pain of Abraham's face, but also the willingness of Isaac to be slain. So that's the lamb in the Old Testament. There also comes another thing, and that's that of a lion. In Isaiah, the same prophet, but chapter 9, not 53 anymore, chapter 9, we see this verse. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. So you think government, you think power, you're thinking lion. So here we have a bit of a contrast maybe. We've got the lion and we've got the lamb. Good. So we've spoken about the Old Testament. We've spoken about the world and we've spoken about the Old Testament, and now we'd like to talk about the New Testament. What do the disciples and those around Jesus call him? What did they identify him as? So any titles that someone might have called Jesus as? Yes.
Rabbi?
Rabbi is a good one, yeah. Any other titles? Paul has got one. Messiah, yeah. Anyone else? What was Jesus called as? If this gets too long, I'll just point you out. So,
Or I will put the microphone in front of your mouth.
teacher, yeah. Right. What about people he was healing or people he was coming to heal? What did they say of him? Right. Anyone know any stories? A good one is also the son of David. So I'll put you out of your misery. So teacher, rabbi, in the Gospels, we hear him being called the Word. Lord is a big one, Lord, right? The Lamb of God, alluding to something we've already mentioned, and also son of David, who is a king. What about the Pharisees? Did any titles you think that they gave Jesus? Anything that you remember? It's a bit harder. Good, yeah, blasphemy is a good one. Right? They also call him teacher, but they don't call him teacher the way the disciples and everyone else around him calls him teacher. If you read the verses where they call him teacher, it's more like, teacher, tell us, right? Like it's a bit of mockery. So they call him teacher, blasphemer, they call him a glutton and drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, and a friend of Beelzebub. Anyone know who Beelzebub is? What do you reckon?
Isn't he the name of a demon?
Yeah, he's the ruler of the demons. And so the Pharisees, when he's casting out demons, they look at Jesus and they say to the people around him, the only reason why he can cast out these demons is because he's with Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons, and that's who he is. So we've got a bit of another contrast. We've got the disciples saying that he is this teacher, that he's the Word, he's the Lamb of God, son of David, And we've got the Pharisees saying that he's a blasphemer and a friend of Beelzebub. But as we know, Christ says stuff about himself all the time. And this part should definitely be easier for everyone, right? What is one thing Christ refers to himself as? And he's got 1,000, so go for it. I am. It starts with that always.
Alpha and Omega.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's later on, but yes.
What was a Son of Man?
Good, yeah. Son of Man, he does, yeah. Yeah, the way, the truth, and the life.
The law of Moses, like he says, I am the law
Yeah,
of Moses.
yes. The bread, yes, is a good one. The Good Shepherd is also a good one. Yeah, I think those are excellent ones. Basically, that's what I had as well. So he says, I am the light of the world. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He says, I am the Good Shepherd. I am the vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. I am the bread of life. So those are all the things that I guess Christ identifies himself as. The next natural question is, how do we see Jesus in the Bible? Right? Is he a lion or is he a lamb? Right? Is he like this soft person, or is he some guy who's coming in with a lot of authority? We know of some instances where he's very meek and very humble, and then some instances where he's speaking with a lot of authority, almost antagonizing. So throughout this next part, it's left hand up for lion, right hand up for lamb. And if your hands aren't up, I'm pointing you out. And if your hand is up for something else, you just got to explain it. It's no big deal. You just say, I think it's lion because of this. So we'll start off nice and easy. Christ's birth, does it look more of a lion picture or a lamb picture? So right hand for lamb, left hand for lion. Right hand for lamb, left hand for lion. Yeah. Friend at the back, why both?
Honestly, because I want to say that his birth alone kind of does something to fight the devil. His birth alone is kind of like a threat to the devil.
I think
So
something
like that, maybe.
I would actually agree to a good deal of that. So it's God became man isn't a very small thing, right? We can say maybe his humility to be born in a manger is like a lamb, but God becoming man, like you said, is quite a big deal, almost very king-like, right? So thank you. I especially like the idea of lamb because it's like he's a manger as well, so it works well. So what about healing the woman with an infirmary for 38 years? Right for lamb, left for lion. Right for lamb, left for lion. We got a few rights and a few lefts. All right, Abnob. Explain yourself, please.
Wait, this is when she came and touched him from behind, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, because I think he turned around and asked who touched him, and then when he found out that it was her, he had compassion. He didn't, like, his reaction was very kind towards her, and obviously he knew that she has been in that condition for a long time. So I think that humility and that compassion that he showed her is leaning more towards lamb.
Yep. Cool. All right. And then other people might argue, well, she touched him and immediately she was healed. That's a very powerful thing to do, right? And it's up to you. I'm more thinking power, but yeah. All right. This is Christ overthrowing the tables of the money changers. So if you don't know, he goes into the temple where people are selling goods. He grabs a whip of cords, or a cord of whips, sorry, and he drives people out with it from the temple, and he flips the table, says, you're not allowed to do this in here. Right for lamb, left for lion. Okay. There's always, yes, we'll go with it. Please justify why you also think it's lamb.
Okay. I kind of, obviously everyone says it's lion because, it's kind of like fighting. It's obviously, he doesn't like what he sees. That's obviously, but why the lamb?
Yes, please.
Is because he kind of he's showing a lot of compassion for the church. Obviously you wouldn't do that if you didn't show some sort of love for something. So I guess in some sort of way, it's some sort of compassion. I mean, you wouldn't really, if you're a lion, I guess you're more like towards fear and anger, but it's more lamb compassion towards something.
Sure.
I guess.
Yeah, okay. So because of his love for church, for the temple actually, but he did this.
I guess so.
Fair enough. I probably would have just said lion, but that's I like the idea. What about this one? Right for lamb, left for lion. There you go, a couple of votes. Cool. All right. What about this? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? Right for lion, left for lamb. Sorry, right for lamb, left for lion. Can't keep switching it. Right for lamb, left for lion. So a lot of people saying lion. I'd agree. What about Christ at the trial? A lot of people saying rights and lefts, and so right is lamb, left is lion. Right is lamb, left is lion. So I would actually say it's both, yes. What do you reckon? Why, Peter? For both. Why is it both?
All right, so one mic for each. So lamb. I think lamb because it literally says like he went to the cross like a lamb. So that's that whole period, the build-up period. Him being like trialed as a lamb. From the people's perspective, there he looks powerless, but technically he's also a lion because he's facing it all for our salvation and he's carrying all our sins in that moment.
Yeah, you guys are much deeper than I am. I said right and left because one, he was pretty silent for all of it, but there's one point in time where an officer strikes him and he says to him, if I've done evil, bear witness of that evil, but if not, why do you strike me? So it's like he's been silent this whole time. This officer hits him and he just tells him, why'd you do that? Right? So it's almost like he's been lamb this whole time, but for this one person, he chooses to be a lion for some reason. What about when he saves and he resurrects Lazarus from the dead? Right? Lamb or lion? Bit of both. Cool. I'll skip through the rest so I'm not torturing too much. What about cursing the fig tree? Lamb or lion? Lion, lamb, lion. Cool. What about when he sees the sinful woman on the floor and the Pharisees are judging her, ready to stone her, and he bows down and he writes in the sand, he who has no sin, cast the first stone. Bit of both. Cool. So, we've spoken lamb or lion, lion or lamb. We've spoken a lot about it, but I really haven't gotten to the point so far. Just danced around it. So what is the secret? Is he a lamb or is he a lion? Who is he? And it's quite simple. It's God. So thanks for nothing. But who is God? All right. Nice and simple again. It's always been the beauty I think of our church is things are extraordinarily simple, and I think sometimes we just complicate it. But who is God? You ask any year 2 or kinder kid, and they'll tell you God is love. right? Classic Sunday school answer. But that's Christ's identity. But how can love curse the fig tree? How can love flip tables? How can love drive people out with a whip? How can love curse leaders of God, actually, the people of God, right? And the answer is because love does not seek its own. Love doesn't look at itself at all. Christ does whatever the person in front of him ever needs, right? So, those who had need of healing, he heals. And those who need to be fed, he feeds. Right? Those who needed someone to die for them, he came down to die for them. The Pharisees needed to be brought down a couple of notches. Right? The Lord rejects the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. They needed to hear him cursing the fig tree that appears to men to be very good, but is actually not. They needed the fear of God and not to look for the money and the profits that they make. Right? He was a lion to those who needed to see his authority and his leadership. But he was a lamb to those who needed to see his love. And I think one of the best examples that I've seen is mothers with their babies. This is, I think you see a mother, it's the hardest time for them. They come to get this vaccine with their baby that's 6 weeks old. So they've had this baby for 6 weeks, they've loved and cared for this baby, and now they take this baby to the doctor. The doctor sits the baby on the mother's lap. The doctor grabs the baby's leg, injects a very sharp needle into them. And it's almost harder for the mother than it is for the baby. Right? It's quite an uncomfortable sight. But the mother knows that the baby needs it. They need to be put through this 10 minutes of pain because there's a lot of benefit that comes out of it. This is a classic under 2 tantrum, right? This is a baby crying because the mother told her that she needed to wash her face after dinner. But we do this all the time, and we do this with ourselves as well, right? Sometimes we need to eat right and exercise, and I know I need to eat right and exercise, but I just don't want to, right? And how would you then also react if you're spending money on clothes and food and you go to see an accountant to look at your funds and the accountant tells you, oh, you got to chill with the Macca's runs and please just maybe put that money into an investment or something, right? And if you've had teachers at school, you might have teachers at school and they come up to you and they say, listen, you're not doing too well today, you haven't been doing too well this term, you need to put your head down because it won't look good towards the end of the year. And it's uncomfortable for both you and the teacher, but it needs to be said, it needs to be done because you benefit from that. All right. So we've spoken about the world, we've spoken about the Old Testament and the New Testament. When Christ poses this question to the disciples and he says, who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they say, some say Elijah, some say, one of the prophets. He doesn't stop there. He changes the question a little bit. And he says to them, but who do you say that I am? Who is Christ to you? We can talk about the identity of Christ, but who is he to you? Do you see him as the lion or do you see him as the lamb? Is he someone is he just the awkward guy you got to make small talk with, right? It's very hard to have that conversation, but you stand up and you say, hey, how's your week? Not too bad. How's your weekend? Not too bad, thanks. And oh, what do you got on for today? I'm just going to do this. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, me too. All right, have a good one. Yeah, sweet. Right? We've all had that awkward conversation. Is he that person you have the conversation with? All right, how far thou art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Right? It's almost the exact same. Yeah, I did this today and I did that tomorrow, and I'm going to do that tomorrow. What about the guy you used to know when you were younger, but have since fallen out of touch with? Right? A lot of us, when we were younger, we had Sunday school, when we had maybe school even, we were very close with God. But since then, when it came to our taking up our relationship with Christ, it's sort of fallen away. What about him as some celebrity. Everyone knows Jesus. Of course I know Jesus, right? Yeah, he's the king, right? But which of us actually attended Prince Philip when he came? Which of us attend every week when he comes? How should I see him then? He's the one who will be whatever he needs to be for your ultimate sake. He's loving father or disciplining dad. He is close friend and companion. He is comfort and the provider of difficulties. And that's okay. Because it is what you need. So he is comfort and the provider of difficulties and that's okay because it's what you need. It's very similar to the idea of confession. You go to Abuna and you tell him, Abuna, I've done this and that, and I'm going this way about my prayers and my Bible readings. Sometimes he'll say, well done, son, keep going. And sometimes he'll say, that's no good. You've got to improve that. Right? In the liturgy, we say, deal with us according to your goodness. Right? We also say, worship God in fear and trembling. To finish up, I hope the point is clear, but if it's not, it's very simple. Who is Christ? Christ is God. God is love, and love is selfless. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bish. I think I speak for everyone when I say that was really enlightening. Do we have any questions for Bish? Any questions at all? All right. We'll end it there. We've just got a few announcements, okay? I just want to remind you guys that summer camp is in February, 7th to 9th of February. Save the date, put it in your calendar, cancel your events. If you're going on holiday, cancel that holiday. All right, February 7th to 9th of, February 7th to 9th. We also have a few interesting weeks coming up. The week after the next, we have a Tasbih series, which is really important considering we're about to enter into the month of Gah. In that Tasbih series, we will go through what the Tasbih actually is, how to benefit from the Tasbih, and then we're going to do a youth Tasbih all together on Friday, just like what we did with the liturgy series. So I encourage you guys to look forward to that and lock that in, and that is it. Any other announcements? Saintly Strokes 15th of December. All right? Sign up on his vine. Okay, let's stand up for him. Another announcement? Carols. What was the date again? 15th of Jan is Carols. 5th of Jan is Carols. I'm sorry. 5th of Jan is Carols. Okay. Oh, also just a reminder, New Year's and Carols. If you would like to help out with the setting up of both New Year's and Carols, we obviously need a lot of support. If you would like to help out, please let me know because we do need support in that regard. Let's sing.
All right, this is one that we all know, so let's please sing and praise together. No eye has seen another God like you, who opens the jails and shatters the chains. No eye has seen another God like you, who opens the jails and shatters the chains, who parts the sea, and behold, there's a path. No mountains or barriers get in his way. No eye has seen another Who else but you could appear in the flames or rescue us all from the lion's den? Who else but you could appear in the flames or rescue us all from the lion's den? Who lights the way when the darkness comes with a blaze of love in a pillar of fire? No eye has seen another God like you. No eye has seen another God like you. Who else but you went to Calvary? Who else paid my debts, carried my iniquity? Who else but you went to Calvary? Who else paid my debts, carried my iniquity? And you promised me you're coming very soon to take me to heaven for eternity. No eye has seen another God like you. No eye has seen another God like you.
Have mercy on us, O God, have mercy upon us. For yours worshipped and glorified in him. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. If we didn't hang outside.